fell, took some mighty, powerful cherubim with him. Because they would be, the cherubim were around the throne of God. And he says, the reason Lucifer fell is he says, I will be like the Most High God. And God kicked him out. Because God created him for the purpose of, he was a living musical instrument. And I'll bet he was the most beautiful cherub there was. And the other angels, the other cherubim might have been pretty impressed with Lucifer, the morning star. So could it be that at this particular time, before Jesus could come on the scene and deal with some things, that these angels had some free reign and the ability to transform into men and be able to procreate. Now that's something that's, because they couldn't be immaterial mating with material. They would have to become material. And we know that they can, because when we read of Abraham visiting with the angels that come, they look like men, not women. I know a lot of people like to make angels look like women, but they're always the male gender. And so these angels come and they look just like men. Well, if the angels of God can do that, why couldn't those who had followed Lucifer do the same thing, except did they have a specific power to procreate? Now the Bible does say that angels weren't to marry, but it doesn't say anything about intercourse. We don't know. There's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts about that. But here's the thing that I want you to think about. If that is the case, then no doubt that is why God was grieving, because he saw what was happening on the earth. And he goes, man, I'm going to have to wipe this out. I'm going to have to completely flood this place because they have corrupted, that is, these angels have corrupted the earth. Now, you guys have probably heard, if you really want to get freaked out, look up in Google and type in evidence of demons scratching. You type that in Google, you're going to get some bizarre stuff. Because demons have been able to manifest themselves in the natural realm. You can't see them, but you see the victims who are possessed by them, and they have scratch marks all over them. They have blackened eyes. And they're not doing it themselves. And you can see it for yourself. I don't even have to try to prove it to you. It's all there. Go check it out for yourself. But there has been much evidence of demons scratching, biting, and even sexually assaulting their victims. Where did they get that? And why would they do that? Now, if it were the sons of Seth, and it was all of a natural thing, how is it that we find them returning after the flood? What do you mean? Well, don't you remember in Numbers chapter 13, verse 33? There they said, we saw giants. There be giants in the land. The descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our sight, and so we were in their sight. They were afraid. And what of Goliath and his brothers? Where did these giants come from? Is it possible that they played naughty again and punctured in a much smaller way? Because the whole earth was wiped out. How did they become giants again? You see what I'm saying? It couldn't have been the sons. They were all destroyed in the flood. And you had Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And that was it in their family. And they were all righteous. So it's kind of interesting to think about. So it seems that until Jesus Christ, the promised seed, came, that these angels, for whatever reason, had God's permission and they were on the loose. To some extent, there was some control in it. Obviously, to the extent that they had to allow the demonic activity to take place. They had to ask it in. And we see people do that, right? Could these angels, could these be the angels Jude was alluding to in Jude 1 verse 6? And the angels who did not keep their proper domain or estate, but left their own abode where they belonged. Left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Okay, here's a good question, playing the devil's advocate. Even if angels could make themselves appear as human bodies, why would they want to marry a marry woman and settle on earth, settle down on earth? Why would they want to do that? Because Lucifer told them to. Remember, he's the boss? And what would he want to do? Corrupt the race. Corrupt it. Do whatever you have to do, guys, to corrupt. I don't want that seed appearing. But it appears here that these angels are so dangerous that they are reserved right now in everlasting chains. God had to lock them up. Lockdown. Can't go out anymore. And my suggestion to you is, once Jesus died upon the cross and sin was judged, now we don't see these bizarre mutant giants. But have you ever seen a godly giant? Is there any in the Bible at all? No such thing as a godly. Isn't that interesting? They're all abnormal. Except maybe the Jolly Green Giant. Yeah. But I believe, and you guys don't have to believe this, but with all this kind of stuff in mind, and believe me, I've been chewing on this for a while, I believe the Nephilim were a product of a powerfully fallen cherubim under Lucifer. And right now, these dangerous angels are in lockdown until when? The judgment of the great day. Now, this will explain to me, there's a very difficult passage in 1 Peter that may explain how Jesus dealt with these angels. Check it out, 1 Peter 3:18-20. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the just for the unjust, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, by whom he also went and preached to the spirits in prison, who formerly were disobedient. Now there's a lot of question who that is. But I find it interesting that he went in and preached to them who were formerly disobedient. Some have suggested it was the saints before he took them into glory. That's a possibility, but I also think that he addresses these spirits, if these are the angels, that he addressed them, because it goes on to say, who formerly were disobedient, when once the divine long-suffering waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was being prepared, in which a few, that is 8 souls, were saved through water. Okay? So that's one verse that kind of, And then Peter, keep in mind that Peter he was a fisherman, but he was a born-again Jew. He understood the traditions. He understood the stories. He understood Jewish history and dogma and all the extra-biblical writings that were written in the Jewish history. And perhaps he has some insight on just where these angels were chained up. And this is where it gets really out there, so bear with me, okay? Bear with me. In 2 Peter 2:4-5, It says, for if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell. How many have a reference Bible? Do you have a reference Bible? Do you have a reference? Is there a mark next to the word hell? Do you have a mark next to the word hell or a number? Okay? If you have one like I do, it gives me that it is not the word hell, but Tartarus. The word Tartarus. It's the only time it's mentioned in the entire New Testament. So, for God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to Tartarus and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world of the ungodly. So this idea of where are these angels? They're chained up somewhere. Where are they chained up? Peter tells us it's in a place called Tartarus. So what, you might say? Well, this is where you have to understand where mythology comes into play. And this is why, to me, it shows and proves to me that all of this is true, that somehow these angels were able to carry this out. Tartarus is not hell, but it's just as bad. They say it's the lowest region, as far below earth as earth is from heaven. And this is where Satan will be held for 1,000 years during the millennial kingdom. Remember? One angel tosses him in, and he is shut down for 1,000 years and then let out for a short time. Tartarus is probably where he goes into before his final destination in the lake of fire. But this is where it's interesting when you read in the book of Revelation. Remember about the unclean spirits called the frogs and all that? And you read them. You go, what? That is bizarre stuff, right? Could it be these are those particular angels? Listen, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be when the Son of Man comes back. That is, these angels are going to visit this earth again. But guess what? You and I won't be here. Because of the cross, man. Because of the cross. So Tartarus, you have Tartarus. Where is Tartarus? They tell us that Hades is a place of those who died without Christ. It's not hell. It's not hell. Hell doesn't exist yet. That's the lake of fire. That's happening. And see, this is where we have to, like I said, you're hearing stuff you probably have never heard before. And you have to understand that we have been taught about certain things and we have assumed certain things. But the thing is that hell doesn't exist yet. Hades is a place for those who died without Christ. Paradise was a place for those who died in Abraham. And when Jesus Christ died, he descended down into paradise and he took the believing remnant up with him, those who died in the Old Testament. They died in Abraham. Abraham's bosom is another talk. Now that place has been shut down. Remember what he told the thief on the cross? Today you will be with me, not in Hades, but paradise. Paradise was the place where people, when they died in Abraham, went. But it was still hell. It was still, it wasn't heaven. But it was paradise. It was maybe like Eden. I don't know. But the idea is that that's where everyone who believed in Abraham, they were righteous by believing in Abraham. And they were taken up when Jesus descended and took them up, if you read there in Ephesians chapter 4. But Hades is there, and underneath Hades is where Tartarus is. And if you read there in Luke chapter 16, the parable, they say it's a parable, the rich man and Lazarus. It doesn't say, and hear the parable of the rich man and Lazarus. It says there was a certain man, a certain rich man, as if it was an actual story. about a rich man who died and went